What's up, guys? It's your boy Impulse, back at it again with another response. This time we're going to talk about presuppositionalism. Presuppositionalism is known as an approach to apologetics that has to deal with what they call transcendental categories. This can be things like logic, morality, knowledge, things as such. Here, we'll be only discussing the intelligibility response or the intelligibility questions to the atheist or the agnostic coming from the presuppositionalist. Let's get into it. Some presuppositionalists will start off by asking, what is it that is fundamental and ultimate that grounds intelligibility? There's questions about what grounding really means here, but we're going to sidestep those for now and move to more specific issues on the matter. Let's get it. Some presuppositionalists would say that in order to make a statement of fact, you have to reference God. So let's take the regular classical understanding of knowledge, just as a placeholder for now, JTB. So whenever one knows something, knowledge necessarily references God. In short, this is basically just God knowledge, right? We're just going to call it that and move on. Okay, so when a presupper asks you if they know or you know something, or how do you know something, since they already agree from the outset that whenever they make any reference to knowledge, they necessarily reference God, you can actually just translate the statement as asking, do you have God knowledge? If you're talking to an agnostic or an atheist, this is almost puzzling. Why would you even ask me that? It's like, no, I don't have that type of knowledge. Well, an atheist would say no, an agnostic could say, I don't really know. I'm not sure. I don't have a belief one way or the other. So, and some way to fortify this idea is that one can simply just know something that, let's say, for example, let's talk about like cigarettes. I know that cigarettes causes cancer, but I don't know what exactly in cigarettes cause cancer. Something like that. Like my kid can know that, right? Like my kid also can know that, the food tastes good without knowing why the food tastes good or how the food tastes good or what is knowledge. They don't have to know that. Here's another type of understanding. Like, let's say if I'm teaching my kid how to do 1 + 1 = 2, just simple stuff. But I don't have a kid, but as just as a placeholder there, one knows. So 1 + 1 = 2. He can know that 1 + 1 = 2 without knowing that he's doing basic arithmetic. That's just one approach to the topic. So the second response that we're going to be addressing is what people know as the KK thesis. So the presuppositionalist is going to ask you questions like, how do you know that? And how do you know that? And how do you know that? So there might be a hidden assumption here that you need to know that you know in order to have knowledge. So there has to be this type of like second order knowledge to know that P. In order to know that P, you have to know that P. You can also run this with justification. One needs to be justified in knowing that P. That's another way of doing it. But for the sake of this discussion, since many precepts do in fact ask questions like, how do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know that? We're just going to focus on the KK thesis. Percy! The dog. Alrighty, so now that we realize that we have to have this discussion about the KK thesis, now what one can fairly ask the presupper, why do I need to know that I know? What's the argument for the KK thesis? So you can go about it as, why can't I simply just know that I know? Or you can argue, if you'd really like to, argue for some type of like externalism. You can simply just know things, right? So there are different types. There's a debate here about internalism and externalism, which Internalism just says the factors that are at play in knowing things are purely, keyword, purely internal. And then you have externalism about knowledge, that the factors that are at play for knowledge aren't purely internal. They can also be external. It can be like things like your environment. However, I will note that you can mix and match the views in the sense that you can take a view about justification and justification being internal, and you can take a view about knowledge and knowledge being internal. Knowledge being external. So these views are, people know them as like reliabilist views about knowledge. I take a similar approach to this. I'm what's known as a virtue reliabilist. That's my epistemic view on knowledge. Now, I take the approach where I decouple the justification condition with the reliability condition, or you can, since I'm a virtue reliabilist, I'm talking about like competence or ability. I won't be getting too deep into my theory of knowledge. If you guys would really like to see a video on my theory of knowledge, I will be happy to make one. However, I'm just going to be brushing over this really, really quickly. So one can take a view, as I do, that knowledge is purely external, so I can simply just know things, and that justification is internal, right? And then you can have a view like that. Now, the KK thesis is not going to work on me, because I can simply just know things. So simply asking, okay, knower, how do you know that you know? It's like, well, you can ask that, that's fine, but I can know without knowing how I know or that I know, right? I can simply just know it. And again, this is just a debate that happens in the literature, right? So the internalist and externalist divide happened after Gettier published his paper. The Justified True Belief is that, I forget exactly what the title was, but after Gettier published his paper, you see this divide between the externalist and the internalist. And so this is an approach that one can take, right? Why do I have to accept the KK? Why do I have to accept the JK? Why can't I just simply accept K? Just know. This is one approach that you can take. Another approach that one can take during the debate with a presup is accepting some type of thesis that is required for the referent of knowledge. So this is what is known as kind of like a parody response. You could just parody the reasoning. So let's say, for example, I'm going to take again, going back to the JTB approach. One can simply just say, instead of saying JTB plus God, one can say JTB plus psychophysical laws. Psychophysical laws that are just going to be these types of connections between the mind and the world that give you knowledge. And then you have a type of revelatory epistemology. You say the laws reveal the world to you. You have some thesis like that. Again, you can have another thesis. Let's say, for example, I'm sure everybody here is aware of the evil God challenge. I'm assuming. If not, I'll just make another video on that. Let's say, for example, you could take JTB plus evil God, right? So you don't have to say, you don't take the good God hypothesis, you could take the evil God hypothesis, right? Now, if you take the evil God hypothesis with JTB, you can say that, well, in order to know that you know, in order to know something, one has to hold JTB plus be referencing the evil God. If you don't reference the evil God, you don't know anything. So this is another parody response that you could take. Now, a response that might come up for the presup is that in order for have knowledge, since knowledge is a good, God would want you to know things. So knowing is a good, so it just goes against the evil. It goes against the evil God. But I don't find this to be a plausible response at all. Take, for instance, because an evil God would, they want to add that the evil God would deceive you. An evil God, now you lose all your epistemic access to anything in the world. You have skepticism running everywhere. Now, this response just seems to not work at all. Because think of a case. I have a possible world where people are deceived in doing bad things, and people know that they're doing bad things. They know that they will do bad things, and they know that it is bad. So, call me crazy. The world where knowing all these factors that you're doing something wrong, you're gonna do something bad, and that you know that it is bad. This is much worse than merely being deceived in doing a bad thing, right? All else equal, right? So it's just simply not true that under the evil God hypothesis that we would expect a fully deceitful world. Could eventually expect a world with knowledge in it. It's just not a knowledge of bad things, essentially, or good things as well. It doesn't really matter. One can play around with the theory however you want. The whole point here is that one can play a parody response to the presuppositionalist by using a similar reference point. Just reference something else that is required for the knowledge condition or for the referent condition there, that is metaphysically primary, whatever. So these are my general approaches that you can take to the presuppositionalist and arguing against them, specifically the intelligibility response. There has been some debate about atheists can't have second order knowledge, but if the K thesis, singular K thesis, is right, then for any K, so let's say if I know that P, you can't know that P. That's what they want to say. So you can have knowledge that P, but you can't have knowledge that you know P. But again, if the K thesis is right, I don't need to know that I know. I can just know things. I can plausibly enough, I can just have that second order knowledge. Just simplificator. I can know that I know and simply just leave it there. Now you have problems with like infinite regress, but putting those aside, the second order knowledge is just gonna be just how the K thesis is played out. I know that I know, full stop, right? And for any order of knowledge, it just stops there. Pick your favorite order of knowledge, go all the way up, doesn't matter. I can just know all the way down that P, and then I don't really need to give the how I know or the justification that I know, right? Now, there are responses to the reliabilist thesis, right? This will just be, I can probably respond to this in later videos, but hopefully this was good enough for you guys. Maybe, very informative. If you guys want to see more videos like this where I respond to apologetics, maybe I create a video where I express my specific epistemic view and how I decouple justification from knowledge, please like, follow, and let me know. Take care, guys. Deuces.